I've been a fan of the E53 ever since it came out back in 2019. It marked the first AMG model that featured the beautiful M256 inline-six 3-liter engine. Now, fast forward to 2025, we're looking at the second generation E53 and it still features that beautiful inline-six, but Mercedes has packed a lot more goodies into the car, so let's check it out. What you're looking at is the 2025 Mercedes-Benz AMG E53 Edition 1. Edition 1s are essentially launch editions for newly released AMG models, which usually packs different styling, slightly different styling, and slightly different colors, things like that. The E53 has a starting MSRP of 105,000 Canadian dollars, and then this, as tested, you're looking at 136,000 Canadian dollars before taxes and before deliveries. If you want to spec one with similar equipment but without the Edition 1 package, you're looking at about 131,000 Canadian dollars. Historically, the AMG widebody was only reserved for the 63s, but for this year, both the CLE53 and the E53 got the widebody treatment, so along with the AMG body kit, this thing looks really aggressive. Now, it also has black accents, dark chrome illuminated grille, and of course the LED digital lights, along with the very eye-catching $4,300 Opalite white Magno paint. Now, personally, this paint is a little too flashy for me. This spec is a little too boy racer in my opinion. I think an E-Class needs to be a bit more subtle, but the carbon fiber mirror caps, definitely a nice touch. Anyway, under the hood, this E53 gets the AMG P2 hybrid system, so engine and transmission in the front with an electric motor sandwich in between, and then a battery pack underneath the trunk. This is a plug-in hybrid system and it supports DC fast charging up to 60 kilowatts. The engine itself is the M256 3-liter inline-six turbocharged engine. This features now an upgraded twin-scroll turbocharger in addition to the electric supercharger, and it now produces 443 horsepower and 413 pound-feet of torque alone. Of course, this also has the electric portion, which in this case produces 161 horsepower and 354 pound-feet of torque on its own. So in total, this E53 makes 577 horsepower and 553 pound-feet of torque. But if you option this car with the AMG Dynamic Plus package, you'll get 604 horsepower when you do race starts, which means that this E53 now makes 1 horsepower more than the previous generation E63S. Pretty cool. Power all goes through a 9-speed AMG Speed Shift TCT automatic gearbox to all 4 wheels via the 4MATIC Plus system, and in this case also through a rear electronically limited slip differential. 20-inch rims and 4-piston front brakes come standard, but this has the optional 21-inch rims as well as the upgraded 6-piston front brakes. 265 wide tires are in the front and 295 wide tires are fitted in the rear. Now, these are Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tires, so they are pretty grippy. Mercedes for this generation has gone away from the air suspension setup. Instead, it uses a traditional spring setup, but of course it also has adaptive dampers. The E53 also features standard rear wheel steer for up to 2.5 degrees, so at low speeds it adds agility and at high speeds it adds stability. Around back, you've got LED taillights with the Mercedes star within them, carbon fiber lip spoiler, as well as quad exhaust tailpipes, so this rear end is definitely very mean looking. However, I'm not a huge fan of the red outlining the E53 badging. I know what it's for, but I just think it's a little tacky. Anyway, opening up the trunk, because of the huge battery pack, it's 28.6 kilowatt-hour battery pack, the trunk is significantly smaller, the trunk floor is higher than the usual E-Class, and you also, of course, don't have any space underneath the trunk floor. For context, a normal E-Class has 540 liters of space. This only has 370. Now, with that said, of course, you can fold down the rear seats, 40-20-40 split, using the buttons on the side here. Inside is where you'll notice the AMG Edition 1 treatment the most. You've got Nappa leather seats with yellow stitching, yellow inserts, and also yellow seat belts. And honestly, I think it's so cool. I am a huge sucker for this. The seats are also very comfortable. The space back here is great. The material also feels very nice. Overall, it's a very nice rear seat to be in. However, one thing I'd like to point out is that a lot of things that used to be standard on the previous generation E53 are now optional. For instance, if you want rear heated seats, you have to first get the $3,000 Nappa leather interior and then the $2,700 multi-contour seat package. Then you'll get rear heated seats, whereas in the past, Nappa leather seats as well as rear heated seats came standard. Up front, these are the comfort seats and not the performance buckets. And I think it's the better choice for the car because it's just so comfortable. You get a ton of adjustability, side bolster adjustments, leg extensions, things like that. And you also have massaging functions. It's heated, it's ventilating, you name it, it's got it. Steering wheel is of course also heated, and you also get your armrests heated as well, which is pretty cool. This car is optioned with the Super Screen package, so you get a digital instrument cluster, a main infotainment screen, as well as a passenger display. You also have minimal amount of physical buttons, which means most things are controlled through the touchscreen and or using voice control. The carbon fiber trim piece in the middle here looks amazing, and it's actually a no-cost option. Despite having the 3 screens across the dash, I still think the interior looks aesthetically very pleasing and very premium. The one thing that I don't love is the Edition 1 stitching on the headrest here. There's just something about it, the font doesn't look quite right, quite aligned with the Mercedes branding. I much prefer the plaque that they used to put on the older Edition 1 cars. This car isn't equipped with the Pinnacle trim, so you are losing out on a couple goodies, including a head-up display. But what this car does have is the 4D Burmester sound system, which you can synchronize with the ambient lighting and turn this cabin into a nightclub. Additionally, the 4D sound system will also vibrate your seats, so you feel even more immersed in the music that you're listening to. Lastly, the Alcantara steering wheel is very chunky and feels really nice. The paddles are very tactile and the AMG dials are very useful. The only thing I don't love about the steering wheel is the touchpad buttons. It just doesn't work as well as it should. Anyway, let's go for a drive. Oh, so fast. The headline for this generation's E53 is, of course, the added power. And yeah, it's really quick. Whoa! It has really good torque off the line, but the power doesn't feel peaky. It's actually very linear. This inline-6 pulls all the way to redline, and it's just a fantastic engine. Race starts are even more fun because it unlocks all 604 horsepower, and all the lighting in the car just gives you more of that theater. The paddle shifters, I feel, are a little slow to respond at times. Perhaps it needs to synchronize itself with the electric motor. Yeah, it's just a little slow. But for the most part, it's not too bad. And in comfort mode, the transmission smoothness is actually an improvement because the electric motor will do most of the legwork for stop and go traffic. What's interesting is that when you're driving an electric only, it will still show you what gear you're in because the electric motor is in front of the transmission. But that also means that occasionally it will need to kick down. And if you decide to drive with electric only, which I do not really recommend with this AMG, the 354 pound-feet of torque does have more than enough to get you around town. But of course, this is way more fun. Nice. Unfortunately, in my opinion, AMG has fumbled on the sound department. It just doesn't sound nearly as good as what it used to be before. The synthetic sounds does have a little bit of a rumble, but I just don't think it fits the characteristics of an inline six, where it should be smooth and high-pitched. There are occasionally some pops and bangs, but the tone is just not there, and the emotions, frankly, has left a chat. For context, this is what the previous generation E53 sounds like. Ooh, nice. Whereas this is what it sounds like now. Handling, on the other hand, I've been pleasantly surprised. Despite weighing almost 2,400 kilos, which is about 400 kilos more than the previous generation E53, it's got exceptional handling. The car feels extremely planted, and the rear wheel steer is able to very effectively hide the weight. The steering rack is also really quick, and it does also give you a bit of feel, so it's not too shabby. As for ride quality, it's not so much that the bumps make it feel firm. It's more of the tire noise and the wheel noise that gives you the illusion of a bumpy ride. If you try to sort of isolate that and just try and use your butt to feel the firmness, it's actually not bad. The suspension tuning is pretty good. I would say that this spring setup feels better than the aromatic system in the previous generation E53. Alright, perhaps the biggest letdown of this car, in my opinion, is the brake feel. Now, it does perform really well. The 6-piston brakes are able to slow down the car really quickly, but the feel is very inconsistent, and it just isn't very confident. There's also the predictive braking thing where it turns on by default when you're in comfort mode, and so it's just a little annoying. Now, when I was testing the AMG GLC 63 earlier this year, I have found that the brakes to be very, very natural feeling, so I'm not sure why AMG couldn't just replicate that on this car. On the E53, all of the safety features and safety technologies come standard, so things like emergency braking, blind spot warning, adaptive cruise control, lane centering, and even automatic lane change on the highway, they all are included. All the autonomous driving systems work very well, and I have no complaints. As far as efficiency goes, the battery pack is rated for 69 kilometers of fully electric range, but I've been regularly seeing over 80. And if you deplete the battery or decide to use the engine, on the highway my observed fuel economy have been about 6.5 liters per 100 kilometers, which is extremely impressive. City driving, however, depending on how heavy your right foot is, your mileage will definitely vary. Okay, last thing I want to mention is gonna be a little controversial, but I think the battery pack is a little too big. Having 70 or 80 kilometers of electric-only driving range is great and all, but this is a sporty car with a beautiful inline six that's already very efficient. So I would want to use the engine, and I would want to hear the engine sounds. Plus, in electric mode, you're only working with a quarter of the power. I mean, in traffic and in congested city driving, it makes total sense, but I just don't think I would need 70 kilometers worth of it. I think 20 or 30 kilometers would be more than sufficient. Maybe this is all for compliance, but imagine if the battery was about half the size, the car will be lighter, the material cost will be cheaper, the car will be even quicker, and it will handle even better. Perhaps you'll even get some of that trunk space back. I think that would be a more appropriate recipe for this E53. Compared to the previous generation, you're getting a lot more more power, more performance, more aggressive styling, and more flexibility because you can drive in an electric mode. But the emotions, it's just not there anymore, and I think it's a huge trade-off. Anyway, what do you guys think about this new E53? Is making this a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle the correct direction? Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.